Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast, your go-to source for all things mental fitness in sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or parent, you will learn as you join us to dive into inspiring conversations with those who have worked to develop their mental fitness. You will hear from people who have put in the work as either an athlete, coach, or a parent. In each episode, we bring you discussions and expert insights on developing resilience, focus, and mindset. Discover the concepts of mental fitness and learn how to use it to create consistent, durable confidence in both sports and life. I'm your host, Hans Schulstead. Let's get started. Welcome to the Inner Athlete podcast. I'm Hans Schulstead, and we have someone who I am super excited to have join us, Kelly Pannek. She is currently the co-head coach of the Benilde St. Margaret's girls hockey team. She has also had quite a storied career as a player. She's won national championships, Olympic medals, won a professional championship last year with Minnesota's inaugural women's team. First time I met Kelly was when she was a senior in high school. She was the captain of the Benilde St. Margaret's girls hockey team. And I came in to work with her team. And in the process, because she was one of the captains, I got to know her pretty well. And then the other little thing that we share in common is she played in the same association that my son did, Armstrong Cooper. And so just blessed to have her on here. We'll get started. Thanks for joining me today, Kelly.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So let's start out with when you first started playing hockey. So how old were you when you started?
I think I was 4. I think I started pretty young. We had an unfinished basement in our house, and I would go rollerblade around. And when I was a kid, I asked my dad to play, which I think is pretty rare considering most people, I feel like, especially from Minnesota, you have like, oh, my older brother played. So then I played. I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother, and neither of my older sisters played. And I guess I just asked.
You started out on rollerblades in the basement, shooting balls and pucks then basically?
Yeah, I think just like skating around on there. And then I guess I just asked to play hockey. I have no idea. Like my dad grew up playing hockey, so I'm guessing it'd be on the TV and I would watch it with him, but I don't really have any memories of that.
What was the landscape of girls hockey like when you were that age?
Yeah, I mean, when you're 4, everyone's together. Yeah. So it wasn't anything crazy. There was I remember going, as I got a little bit older, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we would go to the Gopher women's games. So that was around, but like youth hockey wise, I think there was girls teams, I think at like the U12s and U15s, but they weren't very established, nor were they very good usually. So I feel like it was just kind of a natural thing that, hey, you play boys hockey. So I played boys hockey all the way up through Pee-wees. I've
heard from some Armstrong coaches that according to those coaches, you were often the best player on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't confirm that necessarily in the moment, but it's funny now when I see like a lot of those guys. Obviously, no boy wants to say a girl's better than them. No one wants to say anyone's better than them regardless. And now it's funny though, because I'll see them or I'll see their parents and they'll be like, yeah, you were the best one on our team.
Well, and did you play with one of our other guests, Christian Horn, growing up?
No, he's 2 years older than me. We've known each other for a while and stuff, but we never overlapped playing together. We did train together some off seasons though.
So when you were playing boys hockey at Armstrong, would you have ever imagined that you were going to have such a career as a player and a coach?
No, I think for me, like hockey has always been just like something I did, like sports. Like it was always, oh, I have hockey practice or I have soccer practice. I have to go train. I have to go to this. Like, I feel like I never thought of it as like when I was in high school, especially, it wasn't like I'm trying to go to college. It was I'm playing. And then people are like, oh, do you want to go to college and play hockey or do a sport? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And then that whole process, I felt like was very much like it was very organic and natural. I've never looked at like throughout my entire career, I've had to miss out on a lot of things as you get older. It's like weddings and stuff like that. But I've never looked at it as like me sacrificing things. It's just me doing what I want to do and what I've made a choice to do. So that's where I feel like, I never would have, I feel like looked that far ahead. And I remember getting asked a question kind of like this before the 2018 Olympics or after maybe. And it was like, did you ever think you would be there? I'm like, no, I just kind of kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I knew I was kind of on the track, but I never was going to put a guess on when.
You didn't have like this big grand design that you were going to be a national championship and a medalist. And you weren't like, didn't spend your youth manifesting that?
No, I didn't. And I think it's partly of how we grew up. Like we weren't, like I was always outside playing games. Like I didn't have as much social media and technology and stuff like that. Like I remember watching national championships, whether it was football or usually football or basketball probably are the big ones you'd see on TV. But, growing up a Gopher fan, so you see both hockey teams there. That was actually probably a big one. It was like winning a national championship. That felt like a really cool, like dream come true type of moment from when I was a kid, like something that I just watched so much of. And then to be able to do that, like I think we were one of the first teams to like cut the back of the net off and like take pieces home. So that was pretty fun.
I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You played 4 years there, right? Or was it 5?
I played 4 seasons. It was just over 5 years because of the gap in the Olympic year.
So tell me a little bit about your experiences as an athlete at Benilde. And what would you say the most memorable and powerful experiences were?
I played 3 sports at Benilde. Hockey, obviously being one of them, and soccer was the other main one. I picked up lacrosse my senior year, but I feel like between soccer and hockey was 2 very different experiences. The soccer coach, he's still there. He'd been there for a really long time, and he just had things really set up well, very organized. Every year you come in and it's kind of the same thing. There wasn't a whole lot of trying to figure things out. Captain's parents, they knew exactly, they'd get the same binder and they would pass. Like it was just very much organized. And I feel like our team was like that. I mean, I was a part of really good soccer teams at Benilde and just had a ton of fun. And I don't know if it's fall being, beginning of the school year and excitement. It always felt like that sport as well. There wasn't as many soccer players. Like there's people that played soccer. Mm-hmm. Whereas hockey, it was a little bit more chaotic, disjointed, but we had a lot of people that were there to play hockey and that wanted to continue playing hockey after high school. Mm-hmm. So it always felt maybe a little bit more stressful, but I still had great experiences. And, some of my best friends are from high school, which I think is really fun. And I think what's cool looking back on it now is the progression, like specifically talking with hockey. And again, like you touched on at the beginning, you were a part of that towards the end, but just see the progression of our class, just specifically, like we were just such a huge class in terms of numbers. And I feel like we had a lot of expectations that we all brought, but then also that were placed on us. And then anyone who knows our story about our high school career, about losing 3 times in the section final to Minnetonka, who wins 3 times in a row, the way that we kind of progressed through that. And I think it was really cool that senior year. The takeaway that I had was, I feel like that was when us as players were like, enough's enough. We're the ones that are able to be in control of what we're doing, regardless of, all these other things. Like at the end of the day, like especially our class, I think we took a lot of ownership of the power and control that we had to get the result we wanted. Mm-hmm. I kind of just put a lot of other stuff aside. And some of those memories from that year are pretty special.
The day that I first met with your team, did you come right from the soccer state tournament?
Yeah, probably. That was because we won my junior and senior year for soccer, and it usually overlapped with tryouts for hockey. So I'm guessing if that was the first week you were there, it would have been at the Metrodome then, which dates me a little bit. But
you good old Metrodome.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were captains of those teams, correct?
Yeah.
What do you think you learned about leadership that you still use today?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, again, going back to kind of both teams, soccer was very organized. So it just felt like be yourself. I showed up, I was a soccer player, I was a teammate, I was a friend. And I committed to play hockey when I was a junior. So I knew like I was going to keep playing hockey in college. So soccer was just a little bit less stressful. I'm still a very competitive person and it didn't deter from that. But I think that I just felt less stress and pressure. And again, I think with how everything was set, you just got to show up and kind of just be yourself. And with hockey, I was named a captain as a sophomore. And that is something I think that challenged me a lot. I don't think I realized in the moment how much it did. I don't think I was ready to handle that. And especially in a high school setting, like you're trying to be a captain and a leader to people that are juniors and seniors who are honestly probably upset that they're not captains and who's the sophomore that just came in. And I don't think it was a team vote. I think our coach had just selected me as it. And it's, being on the other side of it, I think recognizing like how much players can have influence without having necessary letters. That's something I tell our girls all the time. Like it's a big honor to be recognized as a leader on your team. And how we do it is we have the girls now like vote. And then as coaches, we kind of confirm those votes or not. And usually they're pretty in line with what we would choose or what we see. But when I tell all of our girls, whether they're, returning from their freshman years to their sophomores, junior, seniors, and they don't have letters, is how much you can be a leader without having the letter on your jersey. And I think for me, like that's from my experience was, I think when I was named a captain as a sophomore, I think I tried to do too much. And I think it was partially because I think the organization of our team wasn't great. And we had a lot of personality, like strong personalities and strong character. And we were immature and young as well, with most of our team being underclassmen at that time. So I think as I got older in that, I think I realized like, it's kind of like choose your battles, honestly. Like you can't control people. All you can do is control yourself. And there's certain things that like I have to let go in order to also be at my best. Like I can't worry about all these things. And I can't, if someone is going to do something that I think they shouldn't, there's only so much I can do, and how to kind of navigate through that. And I think giving people the space to, whether it's make a mistake or make a choice or have a voice. Whereas I think when I was younger and that I didn't do that as much.
When were you first exposed to the idea of mental performance and sports psychology?
Yeah, probably when I was going through like the USA Hockey camps. I think, I don't know if it wasn't as talked about, I think from a like legitimate, like, and I think you've done some stuff with Minnesota Hockey. I don't think we had as much of that, but it was definitely brought up and talked about, especially at like the national camp level. That was something I think that they would push on. It wasn't, again, as super formal, but it would be a former or current player coming in and talking to the group, usually about something regarding the mental side of the game and how to prepare and how that affects you. And I think the biggest time was when you started working with our team. That was the first time I'd ever really worked with it.
What do you remember most about that?
Well, I remember the OPZ. That was a big one. I remember you actually, I think the biggest thing was you kind of, I feel like getting us to acknowledge like why we weren't successful and like kind of facing that. And like I said at the beginning, like taking some ownership over that so that we know this happens. We know why it has happened. It doesn't have to happen again. And I feel like that was a big thing for our team, was kind of getting over that. And I know you talked with the middle girls this year too about like that fear of what's the worst thing that happens? You lose again? Okay, like it's a game.
Yeah.
But then how to also like work with each other. And it's funny now as we go through it with the vanilla girls like, all over again, and I'm on the other side of it, but it's a lot of the same stuff, right? Of giving each other the space to like have your reaction, whatever. Everyone has a different process of how they get back into their OPZ, but also having the like trust and the communication to sometimes help each other, whether it's they need to be, hey, like get back to it, or that's not what we're doing. Like we're getting some of those reset things. I think I remember being pretty big for us as well. But the biggest thing for sure was just, I think, acknowledging what had happened and what was in our control to change it.
Is there a reset that I have taught you that is your go-to?
For me, it's I do like this thing where I tap on my stick. So if this were my stick, I'll sit there and I'll take my glove off and it's hearing like my nails hit my stick. So it's that like auditory type of thing. And like I'm a person where I feel like I have to, I told some of my teammates, it's like, if I'm like, that was a bad pass, I don't need someone to sit there and go, no, it was fine. Like, no, just say it was bad. We're moving on. Like, I just need to like say it, get done. When I'm at my best, it's in this tone. And when I'm at my worst, it's probably a little bit more snappy. But yeah, those are the two for me. Or like I'll start like snapping or something, like just something to kind of fidget, but also get back in like to a rhythm.
How fast do you like do all those things?
It's actually interesting. I think as I've gotten older, it's both easier and harder. Like I know when I'm doing it more, but I think when I was younger, like college, especially at the beginning, like I'm a believer that like expectations, at least for me, when I put too many expectations or I feel other people's expectations, like that kind of just like crushes you. So like high school or college, I remember when I first got to college, I didn't really think about anything. I was just playing and I was happy to be there. And it was like my expectation was I just wanted to be on a line that got to dress. I just wanted to be on a line that played and then kind of let it go from there. And as I got older, then when I made an Olympic team, when I was on the Olympic team, like it was easy there because it was just do your job, right? Like how cool is it to be here for one and whatever we need to do to win. I didn't have a huge like on ice role on the team in terms of high stress situations. I wasn't killing penalties. I was on 5-on-3 power play, but it wasn't on a normal power play. Like it wasn't, everything felt very much like if I don't score in this game, we still have a great chance at winning, right? And so as I've gotten older and then put in some more of those positions, it's ramped that up a little bit. And then now that hockey is my job, there's just all those other emotions and things tied to it. Like this last year playing was my first professional season. So where you're kind of back into that schedule as a high schooler where you're playing one team one night, another team a different night, and you're just kind of rolling with it. And that was something I actually don't think I did a great job of last year, was resetting after, whether it was a tough loss or a game that was frustrating. It probably took me a little bit longer to reset on that. Now in game, I think it was okay, but it's actually something that was really interesting, because otherwise for the last 5 years before that, every game I played was like a national team game, or it was a game that didn't mean anything. It was interesting to live through a new experience that way.
We both know there for sure you weren't dreaming of playing women's professional hockey.
Yeah.
Because that just wasn't even a thing. Right. It
was maybe go to college, maybe be an Olympian.
That's one of the coolest things I think that has developed since the pandemic is the women's professional hockey, but just in general, just how the growth and attention to women's sports has totally changed. And there's no way that I would have ever, like sitting on my couch with my dad, ever expected to do that.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's what a cool time. I think like for us to start this league this last year, I don't think it's going to really fully sit in like how powerful, and like you're not going to see the impact of it even for years, right? Mm-hmm. But then like with the WNBA having, this feels like the resurgence of the WNBA. Obviously, Caitlin Clark's brought a lot of eyeballs to that whole rookie class of athletes in the WNBA, like they're bringing all this attention. I actually think it goes back to, on basketball side, is when they rebranded the NCAA tournament for women's to March Madness. And so you put this on the same level, and women's college basketball is on TV as much as men's is.
Yeah.
And they've obviously had some huge stars. And so to see how that's impacted now, this following of those college players into the WNBA, and then brings fans, and they, everyone's on board there. And so on our side, I think what's really cool is twofold. One, from the athletic side of it, I think it's going to, again, push college women's hockey to keep going forward, because now, like I said before, people were like, I want to be a college hockey player. Well, now like my high school girls are like, I want to play in the PWHL.
Yeah.
So I always kind of phrase it as this, like when potential students come to Benilde and they want to meet with us and they're interested in playing hockey, and they're like kind of asking us questions and whatnot. But a lot of what they're really kind of getting the gist of is, how are you going to help me or my daughter get to college? That's kind of like the undertone I always feel like is kind of that. And then I think when you get to college now, it's going to be some of those undertones are going to be like, well, how are you going to help me get to the PWHL? Mm-hmm. Whereas before, there was, with the Olympics really being the only thing outside of like after, beyond college. And there's honestly a large element of luck and timing that goes into making an Olympic team. It's a 0.1%, 1% of hockey players, right, that get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so now I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it changes the way that coaches have to be prepared or train their athletes or recruit them or coach, like all those different things, and coach them, develop them really. Mm-hmm. Especially since the PWHL, we don't have a developmental league. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And then from the visibility side of it, I mean, what great timing. I think the world is ready for it. Like you said, I think if this happened, it's tried to happen, right? But it's in the timing where I think people are ready to accept the product that we're putting out there. The way I look at it is we play, this year we're playing 30 games. And every time people come to a game, like you're going to see a hard physical, full out effort game. And on the men's side, in the NHL, you're not going to be able to see that every game because they play 80 games. Like I don't know how they do that. Like it feels crazy to me. And I think that's something that people take away from if they watch our games on TV or if they come in person, is like how intense every game is.
Yeah, that's cool. It's clear to me that mental skills are important for today's players. Can you say a little bit more about why you think it's important for your young players and why you think it's so important for the high school team that you're coaching?
There's a little bit a few things to it. I think one, I think it's hard being a kid these days. I think that there's a lot, like outside of sports, I think that there's a lot that like they see, they have to deal with. I mean, I remember, I think we had Facebook, and I think I didn't have an Instagram till I got to college. Like Twitter was just kind of being a thing. There's different challenges than when I was growing up. And I think for the first thing is it'll be having a space to talk about those things, and everyone has a different, whether it's need for it or different way that they like to do it or different way to deal with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then from a hockey side of things, it kind of goes hand in hand with that. I think a lot of kids, there's a lot of expectations from a really young age because everything is more visible, right? So
Yep.
like I said, like all of our girls, they're tuned in partially because of me, I think, being their coach, but they're tuned into the PWHL.
Mm-hmm.
They're tuned into college. Like they know what's going on. Like a lot of them come in, and I see it with younger and younger kids that like they're hockey players from when they're 8 years old, and they might play another sport, but they're a hockey player.
Yeah.
Whereas I would, if I would have committed as an 8th grader, I would have been a soccer player. Like, I think there's a lot of those things. And I think when you get all that stress and pressure, like you have to be able to deal with it. And I think the best athletes at every level are the ones that are able to like put those blinders on, right? And like they get there and they're playing in that zone all the time. And I think with all those outside factors, like for our girls especially, like we have a really motivated group of players and put all those things together. And then even throw in like school challenges, right? Like school's hard. Like it's not easy. Just giving them that space, I think is important to, get on the forefront of it. And I think it just adds to our views as coaches of, we want to help you be the best hockey player you can be, but we also, like, first and foremost, want you to be the best person you can be. Mm-hmm. And understanding that the mental side of it is encompassing all of that.
Yeah, well, and I think in our conversation when we first started with me working with your team last year was also talking about the importance of mental health. And I also see that as something that's really shifted in the last 4 or 5 years, the emphasis.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you would know way more about this just in your profession, obviously, but I just think how much they see, like everything is out there. Then you can't, like, I remember my mom used to give us the spiel of like Twitter, like anything you tweet, whether you delete it or not, is out there forever.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a small portion of it, but they're Snapchat, TikTok, like all of those things that they're just constantly seeing other things. And it's so easy to fall into the comparisons of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts about mental health and being a kid today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's hard. Like it's hard to even for me, like I if I go on Twitter, I mean, I usually am not that high profile, but like you can go on Twitter and if you search my name, I'm sure there's things that come up and I'm sure there's things that would be like, that's not true. That's not true. That makes me mad. Like you can go find all this stuff and some of it's easier than others. And then even just when you consume all of it, like it's crazy how much, like I've tried to make more of an effort to like be off my phone before games.
Yeah. So you've been in a lot of big championship games. How'd you handle the pressure of the moment?
One of my big things is trying to get back into like the immediate now. So I think you've talked about this before too, but for me, don't look at the end result of what could happen in the game. It's trying to next shift, next play. And I luckily enough, like fortunately, been a part of a lot of wins. I think I was mentioning this to you the other day, actually, when we were chatting, but for a lot of those games, like I went into it having this feeling that like, we're going to win. When you're in that place, it feels really easy. And the thing too, is most of the teams that we've gotten to those points or the teams that have won, especially, like you have that feeling because there's just a lot of trust within your locker room and what everyone's doing and everyone's preparation. And I always try to go like fall back on that piece of preparation. And the other piece of it is for like USA hockey stuff or for the Olympic stuff is the most stressful part is making those teams. Yeah. Like truly, like I think that's the most stressful part is making those teams. And then when you're in those moments of playing, it's falling back on everything you've prepared for and trusting it. And one of the things, like one of my big roles on the US team now is like is killing penalties. Uh-huh. And so I remember being in, the last World Championship and like I'm sitting there, I'm like getting kind of like you get nervous, right? Like it happens. Thinking like, what if like this is the game that I don't do well in the penalty kill? And never like at that level, it's like it typically is special teams that, are the difference in these games. And I just remember like kind of being like, nope, you just got to trust it. You got to trust what you know what you're doing. You've done it almost 100 times this year, like killing penalties against this one team. Just trust that you know what you're doing. So I think that's the biggest thing is when you get to those points, you obviously prepared enough to hopefully be there. And I've been on some teams that we haven't been prepared. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you're kind of you're trying to keep that, like, just keep swimming, like just do what you can, stay focused, keep trying. And sometimes it doesn't work out, but it's typically not because of the pressure of the moment. It usually goes back to preparation or it's just sometimes you don't execute.
Do you have a preparation routine that helps you to get into that optimal performance zone?
Yeah, I'm not actually a huge we did a disc assessment with our team this last event we were at, and she was saying something, and you're probably not routine oriented. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a super this. I think for me, it's a balance of I'll play spike ball and stuff before the game, so I'll get kind of competitive going there, and it's a slow build throughout the day. But it's more about my daily process, I feel like, and even now it's different. Like I was mentioning, professional to USA stuff, just because this daily schedules are different. But typically it's just trying to be in that space where I'm a competitive chill before the game. If I'm too energetic, I'm wasting my energy. And if I'm too chill, I'm not there, right? I'm not locked in. Mm-hmm. So I usually try to do something, whether it's the Minnesota Frost now, I'll play soccer, kick a ball around, sewer, all that stuff. Something that gets me competitive and gets me locked in and focused on doing something. But then also at a level where I'm not going game 7 before the game has started.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Let's make a little shift here to your coaching. So what's your why as a coach?
Yeah, for me, I think, first of all, I don't know if I've ever had a female head coach.
Really?
I think, yeah.
That's crazy.
And it goes to, I think, the conversation I had with you when we first wanted you to work with the girls again, is being someone that they could look to and look at and see what they want it to be. Uh-huh. And I think that for me, I love, it's this give and take too. As much as I hope I provide them, they coaching, I think it's really fulfilling for me. I think I just want to help them accomplish what they want to accomplish. And like I said, knowing that hockey is is the smallest piece of it, really. Mm-hmm. So it's really about being someone that I think that they can look at and see what they can be, but then also just helping, again, be someone, the best coaches I had are the ones that impacted me more than just in my sport. Then they're fewer than you would think. So being someone like that for them, because I didn't have that, especially in the high school setting, which I think is really an important time in their life.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you find the most challenging part of coaching is?
Aside from the fact that I'm not there all the time, I think that's something actually Kevin and I, who was my co-head coach, is it actually, if I'm not able to be there all the time, is it better if I'm just not there? So that's one of the things is, okay, so if I'm in and out and when it comes down to it, at the end of the season, I'm usually not able to be there. So is it better if I'm just not there the entire time, so that every single year, they always have this kind of mini freak out when I'm not there. And I'm you guys have won big games without me here before. You can do it again. It's not a problem. But it's just that change. We talked about that, and we've kind of just come to the conclusion that whenever I can be there, it's still for their individual selves too. Let's do it. But actually, from a coaching perspective, there's a few things. Giving up control. I'm not able to do it. Yeah. Right. You can't. I can't go out there and score a goal. Or I want to, but you have to just try to prepare them or give them, the advice or the tip or whatever it is. But it's probably that, and taming my own competitiveness. Can't remember what you'd asked in one of our the first meeting with the girls after tryouts. I can't remember what you'd asked, and it was
it the one about what do you do to reboot, or what are the signs that you're your OPC?
Yeah, and I was I've never thought about it as from the coaching perspective of it, and I think that was interesting because it was true because it's, for me, I try to find the balance with the girls, right? If I'm just standing there, being who I am as a person, usually pretty vocal and whatever, if I'm just standing there behind the bench and not saying anything, they're going to be what's wrong with you? But if I'm too much, or if I'm too involved in whether it's the refs aren't reffing where I think appropriately or whatever, well, then that's too much, and that detracts from what our team is trying to do. So I think finding that balance of bringing energy to the team, but also doing it in a way that's constructive from a coaching perspective, and not letting the frustrations that when I'm a player, I know how I can get rid of them as a coach. It's still a work in progress. And it's when you asked that question, I hadn't really thought about it.
Yeah. Well, and I totally asked that question on the fly. I hadn't even, I didn't even necessarily plan it, but I think when we were talking about it that day, I also thought, I should ask them that, because I remember once I did it the same thing, a very similar situation to your high school team, where this team couldn't overcome the same section opponent. And I just said to the coach in front of all of them, hey, is there anything your coaches need to do different? And the head coach was like, oh, I wasn't prepared for that. And I'm like, well, what do you want to do? You want to be uncomfortable now, or you want to be uncomfortable after you lost the section final? And she's like, I'll take now. So that's why I did it.
Yeah. And it's like, for me, I think like we try to tell our girls all the time, right? That like, we want open lines of communication both ways. Like we might tell you some things that you don't want to hear, but that's that hard conversation that we have to have. And it can go both ways. And so I think you'd asked us too after, like, are you fine if the girls like check you on that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Like, please. Like,
yeah. Well, and one thing that I would reflect back to you about what you've said today is that, you said they have a mini freak out when you're not there, which I think really speaks to how connected they are to you and how much like they really trust and look up to you. And I think you're right. Like, they can win big games without you. But I just think that speaks to your presence and the relationships you have, which I think is really important, because there's a lot of times when I've worked with teams where I've been like, yeah, this team is not going to get where they need to go because the relationships here are not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And that's something I think we've tried, especially with, it's a challenge we talk about with our team all the time. Like, we're a private school and some of you play in the same youth programs, but a lot of you don't. And it's forever a challenge when everyone comes. It's I say it a lot, but I think people like, your biggest strengths are your biggest weaknesses, right? Like, a biggest strength of our team is that we come from all over. We have different experiences. We have different perspectives. And when you can get that to work together, it's a huge strength. But if it doesn't, it can be a pretty big weakness because you just don't have those. You're trying to build 10-year relationships in 4.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I would say as another reflection is, you asking yourself the question if it's better that you're not there. One of the things that I have also found with teams that don't always reach their goals when they have the pedigree to do so is that some coaches and players think they possess the God particle and don't ask themselves those reflective questions and think, I'm so important that I have to be here. That's why upsets happen. When there is an inability to reflect on that and think about your impact, that's where I see teams get upset or have problems. That goes back to the first mental toughness myth is like, you hit the genetic lottery or you didn't, and that's why you're so good. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you. And even when you were in high school, you were not a player who I was like, oh, like because you certainly could have had a big ego back then and you didn't.
Yeah. I think it's, again, blessing and a curse. Being like a 2-sport athlete and like pretty intense into both, I was never in the mix of a lot of the hockey stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of like, I played soccer in the summer, so I wasn't doing summer hockey. It was just in season type of stuff. So like, I remember when I think it was a freshman, and one of our coaches at the time, he wasn't there when you were working with us, but he was like, well, what school, like, where do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, no, like, but where do you want to go to school? And I was like, oh, like, okay. Like, I didn't realize how good I was, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's something even now is like, I don't know if I think I'm as good as other people think I am. It's one of those, right? Like, it's like, I know you don't, like, I don't have the career that I have. It's like, it's not a fluke, right? Like, I've had longevity in it and all that stuff. But I think that's something that, like, for me, I've never thought I was like that player type of thing.
Yeah. And those types of players are annoying to be around. And to be honest with you, I mean, it goes with the territory, but sometimes when that's the case, it's really hard to get through to them because
you're talking about the players that know how good they are or think that they're that good,
or that they're God's gift to the world.
Yeah. Because
of that, like, any kind of criticism falls flat because that's like a diss, right?
I think that's something I try to tell the girls, or we try to tell them too, is be the type of teammate that, like, your teammates want to cheer for. Everyone knows that if X player goes out there and scores a goal and everyone's like hyped, right? Like, they're the kid that works their butt off in practice. Like, things don't come easy for them. They may not get the same opportunities. And when they get a chance and they score, or they do something big, like, everyone on the team is up for them, right?
Yeah.
And then there's also the kids that when they score and some people roll their eyes, and you're like, don't be that teammate.
Yeah.
Don't be that teammate that the other ones, they're not going to be hyped for you. Because it's a reflection. It's a reflection of your actions and behavior.
Right. Is there any commonalities you see on the teams that have won championships, and what would they be?
There's a few. I think the ones that have won, I think everyone knew what their role on the team was, like from a hockey specific standpoint.
Yeah.
They knew what was expected of them. They knew what their job was on the ice. And I think it was always the teams, whether it was college or international, and then even with the Frost or was PWHL Minnesota last year, there wasn't any question of, hey, when there's a penalty, who's going to go kill it? It's like, nope, that person's going to go and they're going to go kill a penalty. Or whether it's the power play, it's that group that's going to go out there. And like I was telling our high school girls or the middle girls this yesterday, like if you're on the power play, we need to score power play goals, right? So if your job is to be on the power play, do it, right? That's part of it's a little bit of pressure on there, but you have to be comfortable playing in those moments because that's what your team needs you to do. And that's why you were put on those, right? So from the hockey side of it, everything was pretty cut and dry. And then I think that allowed everyone off the ice to not worry about that, right? So everyone was just like comfortable in what they were doing on the ice. And then in the locker room, everyone was gelled and comfortable and on the same page. And it wasn't, I feel like all those teams, it was pretty easy to be like around the rink. And I've been in other moments, right, where it's like, it can be a drag when you're in it and you're like, I don't know how we're going to get out. And again, fortunately, like I think most of the teams I've been on have played in the championship game.
Yeah. Well, and you know what it strikes me is from this conversation, like the importance of preparation, but also like what you've kind of named is that, and I've seen this happen where like, there's kind of the understood hierarchy based on skill and what level and what your role is, right? But I also think what you're pointing out is the more the structure of the team is organized, the less variables there are. It's kind of like, Steve Jobs wore the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
That was a decision then that he didn't have to make. Because when I've been around teams where there's not that, and there's all that chaos, and there's a lot of fights for who's the top dog, that creates a lot of emotional energy, especially with the younger players.
And I feel like you said it, like you have that hierarchy that's kind of understood and it's clear. But then the way that I think, like on those teams that win, it's the way that everyone treats each other is no different. Like it's if your player X who sits in the stands, or you feel comfortable enough interacting with first line starting center.
Right.
And that's something like in Minnesota, I think was always really, we didn't have a huge roster. Like we didn't have people sitting in the stands those first few years, especially. But that was something that I feel like looking back on it was very true. Is like, there was very much a culture that like a freshman can go sit there, talk to a senior, and it's very like encouraged and open and welcoming. But there was also like, this is how we do things here in terms of like how we're going to play and how we're going to compete and how we're going to treat each other, all that stuff as well.
So what role does mental fitness play in the way that you coach?
Like we talked about, it's just that whole, like how much it encompasses everything. This year for me, like as a coach, like I'm trying to be more aware of my own positioning on it, like and where I'm at personally versus while also trying to monitor and, encourage the girls to be working on this stuff as well. That's something that Kevin has made a big emphasis on as well, is like being very like repetitive with the messaging on that. It's just understanding that like you can't, as a player, being a player still, and understanding like how they act. Like you cannot be at your best if you're not mentally at your best. Right? Like it goes very hand in hand. And I think there's times where you can be mentally good enough to be physically good enough. And there's times where like when you're at your best, you're probably not really even thinking about it because you're just there.
So one of the questions I had for you that came up in my head when I was planning this was, how have you handled the transition of being like someone who's an elite performer on the ice and also being a great coach? Because like Michael Jordan, obviously one of the best of all time, but didn't have a lot of coaching success, right? Or Wayne Gretzky. Yeah. So tell me how you've handled that.
Yeah. Well, we're still waiting for more coaching success. So that quite hasn't come yet. But I think it's partially just how I am as a player. And people have asked me like how it coaching has helped me as a player and vice versa. And yes and no. I think I've always looked at the game just in that way. I think when I was a high school soccer player, I think my soccer coach had said something to the effect of like, when she's on the field, it's like having a coach out there. Just because I've always been like a communicator on the field, and I'm a big believer of like, if you see something that someone else that has the ball or has the puck doesn't see, can you communicate with them and help like make it an easier situation? So I think that there's a piece of that to it. I just also like, I love both sides of it, right? And I think there's times where I even think about it, I'm like, okay, is it like get out of your coach's brain, right? As a coach, you're watching from the bench and you're trying to truly like mitigate risk a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to put people in the right position to succeed, for the team to succeed. And you're kind of trying to like help push the right buttons at the right times. And so sometimes when I go back to playing, I need to be like, you're not in coaching mode. You're not assessing how other people are playing. You are playing. Like you have to just be focused on yourself. And then how that is affecting the team and how the team is doing in that appropriate way. But it's a conscious effort to like kind of turn one off, turn the other. It's definitely easier to go from playing to coaching
sure.
than it is to go from coaching to playing.
Well, and the other thing that I like about what you just said is one of the things I encourage every athlete to do if they get stuck in their head is to communicate and start talking. Because when you start talking, you get focused on the outside world, right? And you stay stuck in your head. And I think that that's just really important. So
totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your time today. On a weekend morning, on your off day, it's super great always to talk with you. And you know what? Every time I talk to you, I learn something, which is always about you, but also about my own work, which is always for me a sign that I'm working with good people. And I appreciate the fact that you have me working with your team. It was actually really heartwarming when you called me and asked me to work with the team, because I had worked with you in high school. So it's a total full circle moment. It also, I'll be honest, made me feel really old.
No, you haven't aged. You haven't aged at all. I remember when I saw you for the first time in like years, and I was like, he looks the same. So that's good.
Well, that's great. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, you have a great weekend, and good luck with the rest of both of your seasons. We'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Have a great day.